First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this forum. We all were looking forward to the beginning of its deliberations. We believe this meeting is very helpful, very useful. The Syrian crisis has demonstrated to the Russians all the extent of the terrorist threat. We hope that in this kind of situation we will get an even better understanding of the great role that mass media can play in combating terrorism. Terrorism is a global phenomenon that is not associated with any single country, ethnic group, or religious community. It is an evil that can target or that can emerge and originate in any country and any kind of society. So those who believe that terrorism is a purely Muslim phenomenon are really missing the point, and they really do more bad than good, do more harm than help in this kind of situation. On the other hand, Islamic law was the one to ban killings, to ban assaults on a person's dignity. Islam is a general term, a general name for a very multilateral, multifaceted phenomenon of our religion. Islam the word Islam originates from the word peace, and all Muslims greet each other with the words peace unto you. The lands of Islam, the countries of Islam, originally were called the land of peace, and that should be our basic prerequisite, our basic premise. Before we actually get down to tackling these issues, we need to come to understand that Islam is about peace with yourself, peace with other people. Heads of Muslim nations, Muslim governments, Muslim leaders of Muslim countries, whenever they would be moving out to lead their armies against some other country, some other lands, they would always instruct their troops not to massacre weak ones, not to kill the elderly, to be very careful that no innocents get killed. And any definition of peace should come ahead, should come first, compared to the goals of war. Of course, tension may arise among people, in people-to-people relations. There may be tension between communities. There can be people who misinterpret religion and don't really understand what faith is about. Sometimes there are people who deliberately commit crimes and serve their own selfish interests. You cannot blame Islam for their sins. You shouldn't blame Islam for the sins that are none of its fault. Or the Oniyad. Islam would accumulate, would copy some of the practices from other cultures. So in its heyday, Islam was capable of adapting and taking things from other cultures. But adherents of other religions, we need to say that even though adherents of other religions fall prey to terrorism, but many more Muslims die day by day. There are perverted minds, and we need to be aware of the conspiracy staged by both Arab and non-Arab forces, but they rely on external colonial powers. Until today, there is no general definition of terrorism in the international discourse. This must owe to the fact that in this case that the powers that be would have to convince themselves to condemn themselves of terrorism based on their own definitions. Like I said, it is impossible to associate Islam with terrorism without distorting the image and the essence of our heavenly religion. Like I said, the problem is not Muslims, but it's fundamentalism and terrorism, which is widespread among many religious communities, including Christians, Judaïsts, even Buddhists. As a result, of colonialist wars, millions of people perished during World War II. During the Second World War, the Soviet Union alone lost more than 20 million people, most of them civilians. In modern-day wars, people also die. If we look at North Africa, its indigenous population was almost completely wiped out during the era of colonization. At the same time, we realize that it would be wrong to tame Christianity as a terrorist religion, even though that was the religion of the colonizers who killed millions of people. We are not blaming Christianity for unleashing World War II, which killed 50 million people and had 30 million wounded, and had more than $30 billion spent on wartime expenses in the prices of that era. Even though the West, led by the United States, truly does act like a terrorist group, like a giant terrorist organization, Japan was subjected to a nuclear bombing in 1945 and lost dozens of thousands of people within a single day. Americans killed thousands of Vietnamese in the 1960s, overseen by then Defense Secretary of the United States, Robert McNamara. The Israelis have displaced millions of Palestinians from their homeland. But no one seeks to tame Christianity as a terrorist organization, even though there were instances of Italian terror in what today is Libya. We are not accusing Christians of anything, despite the fact that French colonists killed more than 1 million people in Algiers during the Algerian War of Liberation, when entire cities were razed off the face of the earth, when 40,000 people could be killed within a single day. We don't accuse Christianity of terrorism, even despite the fact that at Abu Ghraib prison, hundreds of innocent inmates were tortured and murdered and exposed to the most inhuman tortures. The same happened in Mosul, Iraq, when President Bush Jr. launched his notorious crusade against Iraq in 2003. Colonial wars have nothing to do with religion. So we must be honest and we must be objective when looking at historic facts. To conclude, I would like to say that all of us today, journalists and politicians and decision makers and thinkers and religious spiritual leaders, we must all stand together against extremism, which gives rise to terrorism and violence and atrocities that are rejected by all religions of the world, primarily by Islam. I suggest we create a network of cooperation, of collaboration that would include representatives of various religious communities and political groups. We could create a kind of a chamber for joint action, which would comprise mass media that would like to contribute to the war on terror. And finally, number 3, we need to launch the creation of a media system, of an information system that would oppose terrorists, that would expose terrorists and their propaganda, and would try to restore the conscience of the masses who have been inoculated by terrorists.